Welcome to Beyond Belief. I am speaking today with Todd Perelmuter. And hi, Todd. Thank you so much for being here.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
It's my pleasure. And you have an interesting story. You were an ad exec, if I'm not mistaken, in New York City.
Correct.
Living that whole life. And somehow you transitioned from that to spending almost a decade exploring very in-depth spiritual practices in multiple countries with multiple teachers. Can you just tell us, before we even get into some of these concepts, like what happened? What was the change that started the ball rolling?
Sure. So it was really totally by accident. I was not even aware that I was stressed. I was a master at suppressing it. And I had chronic back pain. I was like drinking and partying too much. And what I learned years later was that these were me dealing with my suppressed stress. And I was on just a regular vacation to the Grand Canyon and had a near-death experience with a friend of mine. And we all going through all the emotions that you do when you're like facing your mortality and putting everything in perspective. So it was just one of those earth-shattering moments. And then soon after that, we met a cowboy who was really a spiritual teacher. And he used horses to teach people spirituality because horses speak in energy and they don't think. And so there's so much we can learn from them. And I didn't even know, I thought we were going to go horseback riding. And so this was my introduction to spirituality, where he just taught us. And I first saw someone who just was able to see deeply into people's consciousness and psyches, what was troubling them. He could tell someone was afraid of like letting gifts and good things come into her lives, because when the horse gave her the foot to clean, she wouldn't take it. And so it was like doing things with the horse to teach, kind of to help through therapy and help people heal from trauma or stress or anything they're going through. And it wasn't even in my purview. I had no idea about spirituality or these, I would call them 1,000-year-old sciences of the mind. I mean, that's kind of how the Buddhists thought of it. And so that was when I decided to go to India, go to Asia, go to South America, live with tribes, shamans, ashrams, monasteries, and just learn everything I could about spirituality. And that was actually like my back pain disappeared. I stopped drinking, and I just, that fullness of the present moment, which I was always lost in my head. I was always procrastinating and just, living thought to thought and just not in the moment. And so just that piece that I've discovered since then has really been, to me, what spirituality is all about. And that's what I try to find out.
All right. I admire that, and I went on my own journey. It didn't involve as many countries or as many teachers, but, I can relate to where you're coming from. But just to clarify, when you say that you and a friend had a near-death experience, does that mean you had a harrowing experience where something bad happened, or do you mean like a classical near-death experience where you like left your body and met angelic beings and that kind of thing?
That's a great question. It was more like we were, she sprained her ankle halfway down the canyon. And so I went down to basically like go fill up our water, bring it back to her. And when I came back up, she was gone. So I thought I lost her. I was like, my mind was like, her parents are going to kill me. And, but apparently she made it down. She got lost a little on the way, and that's why I didn't see her going up the mountain, the canyon. But she was at the campsite waiting for me after I had gone up halfway and then come back down. And then the only reason we had enough water to get out was because like a miracle of strangers left some like empty water bag for us. So we were able to fill it up and have enough to get up. But Yeah, so it was mainly in the worry sense.
Right. No, that would worry the heck out of me also.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I understand. But let's get into thought, the concept of thought for a minute. Which, you talk about the way I came across you was in your film, from aloneness to oneness, which obviously did extremely well, and I commend you on, and I recommend that people should go watch it. And you mention stress, which I think a heck of a lot of people are having trouble dealing with, from young kids to people of all ages. We are living in an age of anxiety, I would call it. And I think you're right to say that most people don't even fully appreciate exactly how it's impacting them, and it's manifesting in all kinds of different unpleasant and unhelpful ways. So you say in the film that there is a greater wisdom that comes from when we're not lost in thoughts, when we're addressing what's actually happening. So my question, I actually have several questions on that, but the first one is what's so negative about thought? And how do you address what's happening without thinking?
Sure. That is a great question too. Really, there's nothing wrong with thought. It's super important. It is how we make sense of the world around us. And the problem really stems when thought becomes repetitive, incessant, negative, focusing on the past and the future, and missing the beauty that is our lives. And so it's more about our brains are kind of like quantum computers, and they do many calculations at the same time, but we can only have one thought at a time. And so a horse doesn't have to think, I can eat this plant, not that plant. He just eats the plants that he knows or she knows are programmed to be edible. And we have that same intuition. We have all of the instincts programmed into us to survive this world. And when we think irrationally and it is not intentional, we can react out of fear and make bad choices, like selling all your stocks, in a panic. We can do all sorts of things. We're just not thinking clearly. We're not present and responding to what is in front of us. And so when we can, we don't have to say basketball to know a basketball is a basketball, right? We know that instinctually. And so we can understand what is happening around us in a much more nuanced and even complicated way than we can when we try to put it into a mental story. So that's what it really comes down to, is sensing everything, understanding what's even beyond words, and that is inexplicable. And you just have that feeling. And so all of this intelligence can arise. All those gut neurons and heart neurons that have this intelligence that we can kind of sense, this heart intuition and gut instinct. All of this intelligence can arise when we're just fully present and we're not, living in some imagined future negative scenario or trying to put it in some frame of the past. It's just a lot more calm intelligence that we can bring to it when we bring that presence to it.
Are you familiar with a writer named Dr. David Hawkins by any chance?
I've heard the name.
So he wrote, I know you have a video called Letting Go. So he wrote a book called Letting Go. And in it, he interestingly says that it's not that thoughts are creating emotions, it's that the emotions are creating thoughts. And he suggests that we've, as you do, that we've spent our lives suppressing and repressing most of our emotional states. And therefore, because they have a need to express themselves, they want to get out and be resolved, they cause you to think in particular patterns. and in the hopes that that's going to cause us to like self-evaluate and make some corrections. Like, does that resonate to you at all? That it's not so much the thinking that's the problem, it's the actual underlying emotions that are.
I think that there is definitely truth to that. And it may be even more about a 50-50. You know, there can be some instances where the mind reacts. And like you said, it's based on past, you know, experiences, and it's in a conditioned way. And I also think that what we do know is that the subconscious and unconscious are where the seeds of the thoughts come from. So the seeds are like the deep subconscious and unconscious, and they grow and they can rise and break through to consciousness. And that's kind of the thoughts. That's what we are aware of. And I think there is a lot of truth to that. I think that it definitely comes from a deeper place. And the thoughts can tell us something about our physical and emotional well-being. Absolutely.
Okay. Let me ask you a different question. In one part of the film, you talk about the key to lasting happiness. Something that everybody on this planet is pursuing at all times. Many people are struggling with, you know, and so many people are looking for direction, looking for answers. And so many people claim to be providing the answer. If you just do this, if you do this, you do this. And there's this marketplace of competitive ideas of how you achieve this elusive, happy state, you know, that people obviously want. So, you know, you talk about what many religious systems, many spiritual systems talk about, which is the idea that things come and go. There's obviously no permanent state of affairs in this world, at least. And, you know, there's good times and bad times. I think that everybody knows that. Everyone can intellectually grasp that. My question for you is, if that's the case, why is it so hard to move past, you know, an intellectual understanding of this and to actually live with it, you know, to incorporate it in such a way that it's working for you? What might you offer to people on how that could get done?
Sure. And that is really the question of the day, isn't it? That is what we're all looking for. And I think that it really comes down to, we have become so indoctrinated in our society, in the entire West, that happiness is, you know, this financial success, this family size, this car. And we see so many people who have that and are not happy. And we see so many people who don't have that and are happy. And we can see even all the Buddhist monks are just living examples of single people with no family, no money, no success, and very happy. So that is the ultimate question. And the answer from my personal experience is that because we've been told that from birth, and we think that these things bring us happiness, and in actuality, they bring us worries and fears that it'll slip away. And they, you know, bring us, you know, families bring worries and stress. And we realize that it's not the external situation, and that it's the internal situation. And that doesn't mean being a minimalist and, you know, giving away all your things, because the internal situation is about being able to appreciate things, and even appreciate when they go, and to have that appreciation moment to moment, and to make that your new habit, and to make living in that gratitude and in that place where you don't mistake your needs for your wants, and you don't mistake happiness for pleasure. And when we practice that, then that becomes the habit, and that mental state becomes our habit, because everything we do trains our mind. And so when we do things to make ourselves happy unconsciously, that really is just going to add some pleasure to our lives. We're training our mind to escape and to resist and to find discontent in the present moment. So it's really just about practicing in your daily life contentment, peace, and it really just comes from awareness and just getting out of your head and away from any worries, and just being content and being present and allowing whatever is around you to be a curious endeavor to explore, because that's really what life is.
And just to add on to that, would you say that is it a proactive thing that you need to do, or is it more of a become more passive? Meaning, is it something that you have to like wake up and schedule and pursue and be aggressive about, or is it the kind of thing, in your opinion, where if you just stop trying to do all these things, your natural state will take over the instincts that you were speaking about a few moments ago, and they will guide you? Because I know there's two schools of thought on this. There are people who are, quote unquote, really, they're working it. They are striving for their spiritual experience, and there's others who sort of try to get off of the merry-go-round and just try to be for a period of time.
Yeah. I really think that there is a middle path on this, and it's that path of try not to try. This thing is so serious, too serious to take seriously. Because we know we get out of our own way when we try so hard, or we're so attached to some outcome, or we just want to grab for something, and all that trains us to find that this moment is still not good enough. And so I think it's really important to remember that we're not trying to reach a state, we're trying to reveal the state that's already there. And so it's this thing you already have, and the way to get it is to sit into it with relaxation. You have to make the effort to sit, you have to make the effort to direct your focus, but then once you've done that, then you can kind of let the effort step back. It's like you've got on the bike, now you can just coast, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, yeah, go ahead.
That makes sense. I think it's hard, it's hard because there's a lot of experimentation, that goes into, for people who take this stuff seriously, may have tried many of them, and they may have found that they didn't quite work. I think there's a lot of sincerity out there. There's a lot of people who really want it. And there's also a lot of quote unquote failure, people who feel like they just didn't arrive at that state of mind that they would like to be at. And, you can either give up, or you can try something else, or you can keep going. And it's sometimes hard to know which is the right thing to do, but we're all in this together, and everyone's trying to figure it out, but I think what you're saying makes a lot of sense. It is probably somewhere in the middle. But let's talk about spiritual moments, which you discuss in the film, and it's a part that I liked a lot. And you talk about something that, again, everybody has related to at one point in his or her life: the sunsets, the flower, art of all kinds. They equate to a kind of awe, right? And people have these moments where I would say that even if they're not spiritual, even if they're not religious, something occurs to them that the world is greater and bigger than they imagine, than they normally imagine. And there's a great sense of happiness and peace, and awe and joy that comes over people when they have those moments, and as I like to remark, the sun goes down every single day. All it is a glowing ball of hydrogen, that's just moving below the horizon because the earth is rotating. It shouldn't cause any feelings of any sort, and so regular. And nonetheless, that one moment when you're walking along the beach or in the mountains and you see the sun going down, and all of a sudden you have a sense of elevation, why, but one more component of this question. This is all a question. When I was in junior high school, I read a story called "Of What Use Are Flowers," and it stuck with me all these years. And basically, it's this explorer who finds these two young children who were raised in the wild. They don't have families. They don't understand any social conventions, and he tries to teach them about life. And at one point, he prepares a table with, and he puts flowers on the table, and they're baffled by why he did that. And he's trying to explain to them why you might do that. And they turn to him and they say, "Of what use are flowers?" So I find that to be a grand mystery in life. Yes, they're pretty, but most people think there's something more than just pretty. There's something significant to them. There's something powerful to them. Why should trees hold value? Why should they make us feel transcendent? What's your thought on that? What is the nature of the spiritual moment, and what can a person do with it to help themselves grow?
Definitely. These moments are really those signposts and windows into like our highest spiritual state. I feel like we all feel that connection and to a sunset and to a flower or tree. And there is, that's that inner peace. And I think the flower teaches us impermanence and appreciation. And I think that the sun, I think we feel that we are one with the sun. We are one with the trees. We don't exist without either. And I think there is a recognition of self. The whole separateness is truly an illusion. I mean, no one popped out of nothing. We all came from somewhere. And we are intricately connected to this universe. And so I think that we really do see like a mirror when we look at these aspects of ourselves that may be outside of ourselves. And I do think it creates that wonder and awe. And perhaps the reason we recognize beauty in these things. I know that we naturally are drawn to the color green because it tells our ancient ancestors that there is sustained life here and we can survive here. And so, there's a lot of different evolutionary reasons. And there's also, I think, something much deeper, and that we look and we see this intrinsic beauty in these plants, in these flowers, that you don't get too much from the kind of glass and concrete cities. And so, there's just infinite depth. You can look as close as you can or as far as you can, and it's just a totally different but beautiful object of perception. So I think these are incredible tools that not only give us that moment of beauty and appreciation, but really give us a moment to be present and reflect, and that we don't even notice that. But it really is like a super deep 2-second meditation when you're just like, wow. To me, that's what meditation is. Yeah.
I agree, and I have long wondered, how people can springboard off of those experiences to do more with them, to not just have them be these very momentary, states of awareness, but like how do you cultivate that and grow it so that it's with you a lot more of the time, and so I think they're very fleeting by and large, but I agree with you that they're like sort of messages, opportunities, to give one the sense that there's something much bigger going on, and maybe it's worth looking into.
Yeah.
But so up to this point, in the film, I agreed with like every single thing that you said, and then like you said a couple of things that I want to just discuss. the motto of this show is striving together for
Mhm.
meaning and integrity, right? So we don't always agree on everything, but I wanted to check as my like Judaic bells were like going on off but you say at one point, I am God, you are God, which I think I know what you mean when you say that, but I'm gonna double check. And you also say that the universe created itself to sort of participate in its own being. So I guess, do you mean both of those things literally? Or are they sort of more metaphoric, that we all have like an element of godliness within us? Do you think the universe actually created itself? Like what? And if so, how?
Well, originally that kind of came up when I was thinking about that phrase, that God is everywhere.
Yes.
And I was thinking that if God is everywhere, God is everything.
Okay.
And
Yes.
so that's where that first part comes from, where I'm just like, whether we are extensions, like rays of sun coming off the sun, or whether we are, some kind of creation of some entity, I see a oneness there. I see a direct connection. And so that's really what I mean by we are all God, in the sense that we are all equal, no better, no worse. There's no room for arrogance. There's no room for inferiority. And there's plenty of room for humility and for universal love, and to not, put anyone down, and to even treat those we disagree, those we have hurt us, and to even love them in a way that may be like how so many families, it's a miracle, it's amazing, but it is a lesson we can all learn from. So many families say they forgive and even love the perpetrator of a crime against them or their family who's in jail. And we look up to that. And I think that is really the highest ideal we can have in that terms of universal love. And then I think that in regards to, let's see, what was the second part of that question?
The second part was the universe creating itself.
Oh, yes. So that is essentially what I'm saying there, is that, so I said in that video, I believe, or I might have said it in a different video, but what I have found true in my life is that, as we've just talked about, how like God is everywhere, God and the universe are one. And so whether you are Christian, Muslim, Jew, atheist, we all have this direct access and experience to the creation of the universe. And nobody knows in science where everything came from, but what we do know is that it essentially, the universe expanded out of nothing that we know of. And so whether you are religious or atheist, I like to use the terms that everyone can kind of have some kind of understanding of or relation to. So that's why I try to just bring everyone in and say, whether you believe in God, whether you call it the universe, the universe loves us. It's created everything for us to be here and survive and have everything we need. And everything is working out. Like, the universe is like a clock, a master clock. I mean, everything is just immaculately beautiful and perfect. So I would just say that we can all tap into that spiritual essence within us, because there is majesty, there is mystery, there is beauty and awe-inspiring magic out there that we still can't understand.
Okay, I mean, that sounds very monotheistic, which ultimately is it's not so much even about there being one God as opposed to multiple gods, but really about everything being a oneness, all contained within the ultimate one, right? And I'm not sure that people always appreciate that, that there's two aspects to that idea. So I'm definitely on board with that. You know, I would just say that personally that oneness created, you know, I'm a little more reluctant to call it the universe, only because I think it can be confusing to think that, you know, everyone's talking about the Webb, you know, telescope images now. Do we think that the gases and the stars at these incredible distances create something, you know, or they just sort of are? I don't think anyone thinks that they have creative agency. The universe itself is a remarkable structure and thing, but it doesn't seem to think or to plan or to create. You know, I think that there's something beyond the universe that does that, even though the universe is encompassed within that ultimate oneness. So I actually think we're kind of on the same page with that. But so okay, well, let's talk more about oneness, because that's a major theme, I think, for you and for me. You mention in the film that the only reason we perceive separateness is because of the limitation of our senses. I think that's another thing that most people can readily appreciate. But you also mentioned that we only see and hear, if I'm correct, 0.0001% of the universe. Okay, if you could expand upon that for a moment, I would appreciate it. And also, well, yeah, explain what that means and what we should take away from it.
Well, that just means that, you know, dogs can hear more than us, and we have now created a telescope that can see so much better than we can. And that just that was just like the visible spectrum of light is very small,
right,
compared to all light. And same with sound. And we you know, we can't see microscopic or telescopic. And so everything appears at this level a bit chaotic and a bit you know, we can't see the perfect sphere of Earth from here. We can't see the perfect circle of the circumvention around the sun. But if we could see energy, if we could hear all the sounds, there would be no separateness. Like, if you even, you know, zoom into a solid brick, it will be mostly empty space.
Right.
And we don't even know for a fact if there is physical matter. It's so small. We just pick up the traits. And so there's scientific theories that there is only energy and these vibrational frequencies. But you don't have to have a machine to experience that, because if we close our eyes and if we turn our attention inwards, we can sense this spaciousness. We can sense that there is no limit to our perception. And so I think that it's just important to remember that while we see the physical objects, there are so many more things going on in terms of how they're connected, where they came from, how they're related. And these are the things that are the most important, because everything about our experience is how we relate to the world. And so when we expand our perspective and we see consequences of our actions, or we see how little things we do have ripple effects, we can sense this. We can literally see this connection and how we're all connected, and we can just have so much more of an impact on the world. And we will also save ourselves from a great deal of suffering if we can do that as well.
So, you know, I know that you spent a lot of time in the East, and in fact, your production company is called East West. Is that am I saying that correctly?
Yes, we have a company called EastWesticism, like East West Mysticism, and they're a nonprofit that is trying to just make sure that everyone can get mindfulness and meditation teachings wherever they are.
Okay, so that's great, and because it's interesting for me. being a Jewish practitioner of these ideas, that I think people don't realize that Judaism has a very Eastern component to it, and in fact, the strip of land of Israel is located on the far western side of Asia, but really at the intersection of Asia, Europe, and Africa, and so there is this East-West component to it, and I think there needs to be a greater emphasis, for whatever it's worth, for anybody who's involved with Jewish practice, that the Eastern side needs to be emphasized more. And I love what the Eastern mystics say when they talk about this seeing with the third eye. The idea that your eyes, as Ben Kenobi said to Luke, your eyes can betray you. Don't trust them.
Yes.
Right. Which is exactly as you're saying. We're seeing a minute fraction of reality, and therefore you have to be able to visualize with your mind's eye the true nature of reality, because the fact is that we're locked into these physical structures, and we have no other capacity to do that but to imagine it. So the question I'd like to ask you is there any other way that you know of overcoming this limitation? Is it through meditation? Is it through psychedelics? Is it through contemplation? How do you get outside of yourself in order to appreciate that? Or is the intellect the best that we can do?
Well, I think that really stepping out of the intellect, I do think would be the best thing. I feel like we're too intellect focused.
That's Western, yeah.
Yeah, as the Westerners. And that it is possible for everyone to become more mindful and to tap into, we all have really, truly peace, love in our heart, like infinite amounts. We all have, Buddha potential, Dalai Lama, Christ consciousness, whatever you want to call it. I feel like we all have that inside of us. And sometimes, surprisingly, the people who have been suffering the most can sometimes snap out of it more easily than someone who's had a very charmed life. But that is really a beautiful testament to that this is accessible to all of us. Some people have a sudden awakening that they talk about. Some people will meditate for months or years. Usually after a few weeks, they'll start to notice some differences and already get a lot of benefits. And the best thing is to really make every moment a meditation and to be fully present and to practice developing the habit of looking at objects like the first time every time, and to truly see and to hear. And that is what really going with the flow of the present moment is all about. And I think that we tend to get out of our head, and we tend to problems that we've created in our head disappear, and we just can really experience this peace and joy that the more we do something, the more joyful we become after that thing is over, which is the opposite of everything else we normally do. And so right. I think when we make more of those practices part of our daily life, then our mental habits and our thinking shifts.
Okay. This is all very interesting and very important, I think, but I have time for two more questions. You entitled your film Aloneness to Oneness, and you talk about the distinction between loneliness and aloneness. Well, would you mind explaining for the audience what you mean by that? What is the distinction?
Yeah, absolutely. So loneliness is really that suffering. It's the suffering from being alone. And we need people. We are social creatures. It is a human need to connect with others. And we live in a very disconnected society. And so there's a lot of loneliness out there. And simultaneously, there's a lot of people who love being alone, and they thrive in it. And so that's what I would call aloneness, which is not with the suffering. And I really felt this when I was the final kind of stop on my spiritual journey was meditating for 50 days in a forest by myself. And that
Wow.
was, so that was when I really discovered what real loneliness is. And
Wow. Sorry to interrupt you. Did you know that show Alone?
I have not seen it.
Netflix?
No.
It's a competition where whoever can stay alone the longest in northern British Columbia or Alaska, wins like $500,000.
Wow.
And there's these survival experts, and there's 10 seasons of it. It's a remarkable show, mostly for me, psychologically and spiritually, what these people go through. And these are professionals, I'm amazed that you lasted for 50 days. Kudos to you. But the main reason that people pack it in on the show is because they can't stand missing their families and their lives.
Yeah. No, it's tough. And I would not have gone if I had not first learned all of these techniques from all of these different traditions, meditations and yoga and just all of these meditation practices. Mainly, I was just meditating. But Sam Harris has pointed out in his book, I think, that he said, solitary confinement, like being alone, is punishment for already being punished in prison. Like you're in prison, and then if you're bad, you go to solitary. Right. So it is. It's like it's a very heavy situation. But Sam Harris and what I've discovered is that there is a way to make peace with that as well, and to feel connected even when alone, and to really be able to embrace that if you have to, if you're forced to, and I honestly, I look at every time where I know I'm going to be alone for a long time as a great opportunity to meditate. That's just me. I'm a little extreme, but
do you have kids? Just out of curiosity, are you
not
married?
Not yet. No.
Okay.
Yeah.
A lot of these people they really miss their kids, it's,
I'm sure.
Yeah.
I would imagine.
Well, we could have spent the entire time just talking about that 50-day thing. That's that I'm sure there's a lot of depth to that experience that could be explored. So maybe for another time, but I have time for one last question. I wanted to ask you about what I would call the soul. Others would call it consciousness. Towards the closing of the film, you say you are that eternal, unchanging light of consciousness. And then you go on to say your true nature cannot be hurt. And I want to ask you how and why that is, part A. And part B is more of a statement, but wouldn't that change everything if people really could accept it? Wouldn't the world just rejoice if they felt that, my physical component can be damaged, my metaphysical component cannot be, and will be just fine? I think that's perhaps the most hopeful message a person could receive. So what do you mean that your true nature cannot be hurt?
Great. So yes, that is something that I've noticed to be very true in my experience, is that it's kind of like space cannot freeze or burn or be broken, and we all have that spaciousness inside of us. We all can notice those moments between our thoughts where there is stillness. And so what is observing that nothingness? It has to be like a non-physical, non-material thing, because if, for example, if it was changing with time, we would not perceive time. So there must be a stillness to perceive everything around us. And this is that unchanging consciousness. So, for example, when we can do, if we were to do drugs and we were to lose our, sight and our ability to speak, we would still perceive whatever is able to be perceived.
Sure.
And that perception can never change. And it is that essential stillness and that non-physical aspect. That is why nothing physical can affect it. And we can obscure it, and we can change the way we think about it, but it cannot be destroyed. As long as we are breathing, we have our breath, we have our consciousness.
Yes, I agree. And a lot of these ideas are written about in Kabbalistic literature, which I'm, most familiar with. But like that idea of the soul's undamageability is very present there, And again, I would say that I think that message, and I think that your message overall is one of great hope, and possibility for people. So I really appreciate you being here and answering all of my questions and taking the time to join us. I would recommend that people go and see your film, which is almost 1 million people have viewed it already. And for the audience, please take a moment to like, comment, subscribe to our channel, and also visit h.com/philosophy, where this video will appear and others like it, and stay abreast of all the great stuff we have going on at Aish. Thank you much, Todd, for being here. And I wish you great success in all of your endeavors.
Thank you so much. Let's do it again. Happy to be here.